Good morning, everybody, and welcome to November's Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee. Those of you who aren't aware, I'm James Gamble, Chair of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund. And I've got quite a few thank yous today because, let's be honest, we've got a full house. So a thank you to LGPS Central Pension Pool for attending today. We've got Matt Hardwick from Zurich. We've got Tulani Mali from a local pensions board for attending. A quick note, there was a press release. So Nottinghamshire Pension Fund has made savings of £739,000 by reviewing and renegotiating investment fund fees. I'd like to thank everybody on the committee and our officers involved. We've got some excellent officers within the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund. To all elected members, officers, pensioner reps, trade union colleagues and advisors of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee, I extend you a very special welcome. Your contributions and perspectives, as always, will be invaluable. Just a kindly reminder, this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, so viewers can hear the presentation and questions of today's meeting. I'd now like all members, officers, representatives and advisors, that's what we've been doing the last few months, to introduce themselves. We'll do this as a round robin, starting with your good self, Dominic.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Don Monahan, Advanced Democratic Services Officer. I'm clerk of this committee. Thank you.
Good morning, all. Chris King, Pensions Rep.
Darrell Falk, I'm a basketball councillor, but I'm here as one of the district council representatives.
Everton Lewis Gordon, Unison Street Union. Graham Chapman, Nottingham City.
Zafran Khan, Nottingham City Council Rep.
William Bourne, Independent Advisor.
Tamsin Rabbit, Head of Pension Fund Investments. Sarah Stevenson, Head of Business Services Centre with responsibility for pension administration.
Jo Toomey, Pension Fund Governance Officer.
Blarney Malife, Chair of the Pension Board.
Kieran Guilfoyle, Investments Officer, part of the Pensions Investment Team.
Angela Deeks, Chief Executive Officer of LGPS Central.
Emily Wynne-Evans, Chair of the Board at LGPS Central.
Joshua Simpson, Responsible Investment Analyst at LGPS Central.
Patrick O'Hara, Head of Responsible Investment and Stewardship at LGPS Central.
Councillor Jim Burnham, Carlton West.
Bert Bingham, Nottinghamshire County Council.
Andy Edwin from Rashford Borough Council, representing districts and boroughs.
Stuart Matthews, Nottinghamshire County Council.
Councillor John Clark, Arlo South.
Councillor Stuart Bestwick, New Select Division.
Councillor Richard Butler, Nottinghamshire County Council, substitute member today. Stephen Pearson, County Councillor for Bingham East.
Councillor Barry Answer, Nottinghamshire County Council.
Councillor Vice Chair of the Pension Committee.
Nigel Stevenson, Director of Finance, and still Treasurer here for the Pension Fund.
Thank you. And we've got some members at the back, board members and some LGPS. If you can have start, over to you, Mark.
I'm Mark Ecclesall, board member, GMB Union Rep.
Kate Royston Vardy, I am a deferred pension and board member.
Alistair Knox, pensioner representative on the board.
Cara Forrest, Head of Clients at LGPS Central.
Mr. Loads, Client Director, LGPS Central.
Okay, thank you. And we've also got an officer at the back.
Ashley Booker, Senior Communications Business Partner at Nottinghamshire County Council.
Lovely. One thing I did forget to mention, we've got new microphones. So just remember to press the big button and then turn it off. So this will be fun because we're sharing some of the microphones. Right. So before we begin the meeting, I would like to remind those members of the public that are present, actually not any, but I will say it, that placards, banners, advertising materials and similar items are not permitted in any committee meeting and must be covered or removed. Failure to comply may result in that member of the public being asked to leave the meeting. that members of the public should remain seated during any debate and not to do anything to endanger the health and safety of any person. Members of the public may record proceedings and report all public meetings. However, any person reporting must not distract good order of meeting, and please turn mobile phones or electronic devices switched to silent. Thank you. Okay, right, let's make a start on the agenda. Folks, we've got 18 items, so quite a marathon today. I'm sure we'll get through it all. One thing I will mention is today we've got some refreshments coming in, so do help yourself to refreshments during the meeting and also during the training session. So let's start agenda item number 1, which is the minutes of the last meeting held on 25th of September 2025. Committee members, can the minutes from our September meeting be approved, and may we take a show of hands, please? Lovely, that's been approved. Thank you. Agenda item number 2, apologies for absence. Okay, over to you, Dominic.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Richard Butler is substituting for Councillor Harry On, who sends apologies under the category Other Reasons. Councillor James Rawson sends apologies under the category Other County Council Business. And we also have apologies from Neil Timms and John Cockcroft. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. Right, so now to agenda item number 3. Declarations of interest by members and officers. Does any councillor or officer have any interest in any matter on the agenda that they need to disclose? Just note, if any member does have a declaration to make, they should state the type of interest that they have and give brief details. Thank you. No. Okay, thank you. That's been noted. Over to agenda item number 4. Which is the Local Government Pension Scheme LGPS Pension Administration Performance Report. Before I hand over to Sarah Stevenson, our Group Manager for Business Services Centre, to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 24 of this large agenda pack, as always, and a reminder that that recommendation is that the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee notes the performance of the administration of the pension fund and the continued development of systems and processes that improve service to members of the fund. I now ask for a seconder.
Secondly, Chairman, proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Now I hand over to Sarah Stevenson, Group Manager, Business Services Centre. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to inform committee on the work of the pensions admin team for the last financial year. The report details at a high level the range of activities undertaken by the team. The teams are split into several sub-teams leading on different aspects of processing benefits, maintaining our administration system, working with our scheme employers, interpreting the regulations and supporting complex casework, as well as working to implement the McLeod judgment. The Pensions Office also is supported by other teams from across the Business Services Centre, which provide economies of scale without the need to duplicate resourcing. All funds continue to report issues in recruitment. Within Nottinghamshire, we take an approach to grow our own through a pensions administration apprenticeship scheme. We initially engaged 4 apprentices. 3 have all now successfully completed apprenticeship, securing a merit standard in the award, and have been permanently appointed to posts within the Pensions Office. One of our apprentices has recently secured internal promotion. The fund continues to be a member of the Sitford Benchmarking Club. The report shows cost per member, and committee can see that the NOS admin cost per member continues to be lower than the average cost from across the benchmarking club. Data quality. Data is fundamental to the operation of the admin service. The pension regulator has an increasing focus due to the National Pension Dashboard Programme. We annually report data scores. You will see that there's been a significant improvement in our scheme-specific score across the last 12 years. Data improvement is a continuous activity. Fund membership can be seen from the table and it details both our active, deferred and pension members, and it shows that we continue to increase in all membership categories. Scheme employer statistics. Again, these are detailed in report. It's important to recognise the number of scheme employers within the Nottinghamshire Fund, and to manage this, this level of scheme employer provides increasing complexity to the team. Again, we also detail formal complaints procedures within the report. The Pension Ombudsman lays out the internal disputes resolution procedure at the different stages of stage 1 and 2 that members can follow. The formal process also allows members, once they have completed stage 1 and 2, if they are still not happy with the outcome, to progress for their complaint to be considered by the Ombudsman. The admin team continues to work on a range of complex projects. Nationally, we continue to work on the cloud and are preparing our fund for the launch of the National Dashboard Programme later on next year. We also have some internal programmes running. We are looking to upgrade and then to roll out the employer portal to our scheme employers. We are moving our pensions administration system off the on-premise data centre into a hosted cloud environment. But one of our key areas of development over this last year, which will fundamentally change the shape of how we deliver our service, is the automation of a number of key business processes. The automation of these processes in effect mimics what our own officers are currently doing, but it allows us to build in a series of data validation checks. And as long as the data for the entire process is available, from kicking off the process, we can then process that particular activity through all the data validation checks through to the documentation for the member to be printed and posted out to them. We'll see later on that this has had a significant impact on the number of processes we've been able to complete this year. Key documents produced for members in the year is the benefit statement. We issued just over 91,000 by the statutory deadline of the 31st of August and have had 2 further runs, one in September and one is due in December, to mop up outstanding benefit statements. The performance tables detailed within the report actually show there's been an increase of over 11,000 processes completed in the last financial year. This is a direct consequence of the fact that we've built automated processes. We will not realise the full benefit of these automated processes until the end of this next financial year. The fund continues to see an increase in requests from deferred members who are over 55 seeking payment of benefits. Deaths, one of the most complex areas of administration. Following a significant increase in deaths during COVID, the annual figures from the table you will see have continued to fall. However, what the team are reporting is that they continue to see an increase in death in service from members between the age of 35 and 45, with some extremely sad cases. It would appear that this increase in death in service in this age category is due to late diagnosis of conditions following COVID. Payment of death grants also continue to be complex due to blended families. The fund is required to consider the expression of wishes made by the member, but is also required to provide potential beneficiaries with an opportunity to present their cases. Unfortunately, what we see is that when there is a large potential pot of money from a death grant, that this does bring out the worst in family members. The admin team continues to face many challenges, but I hope that you will recognise there has been significant work undertaken by the team, significant progress with the development of automated processes, and we will continue to work along this particular area. I ask that the committee note the recommendations of this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's comprehensive as ever. Guys, there's an opportunity for committee members. Does anybody wish to speak on this agenda item? Okay, thank you, Councillor Stephen. Over to you.
Thank you. Generally, Sarah, there's been improvement in performance, which is very good. And certainly, if you compare the performance of LGPS, for example, the civil service scheme, I know a colleague of mine is involved with that, far, far better. But there are one or two areas where performance against KPIs isn't brilliant. Looking at page 21 of the report, for example, transfer quotes, still only 44% are done within the 2-month period. I wish you could perhaps explain why that is and whether you hope to see more significant improvement perhaps with the new systems that you're bringing on board.
Thank you. Yes, transfers are complex. They're also impacted by the McLeod situation where we don't necessarily have all the information at this point in time. It is an area where we have not prioritised. Our priority is always to retirement. We have just appointed 2 members who've been promoted from within the team, and their focus will be on the transfers going forward. So my expectation would be we'd see improvement in that area in the next year.
That's helpful, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Stephen. Any other members wish to make comments? Over to Councillor Bingham.
It's just a couple of quick observations, actually. So, congratulations on keeping the fund cost per member down. I think the amount below the benchmark has been assisted by the benchmark level jumping up with high cost joiners, from what I can see, but that's still very good performance, thank you. The one thing I was noting from it was that the curve is trending up on total membership within the scheme. It's sort of parabolic, not quite, but it is rising. Do we expect that trend to continue?
Thank you, Bert. Over to you, Sarah.
I think that's very much, within, the number of employers and how they do advertise the scheme, whether people are taking it up. Obviously, there is auto-enrolment. I don't think we necessarily can predict what that's going to be. I think we need to also consider the implications of LGR and how that may impact on the membership as organisations come together in a new entity. Particularly if they're likely to be, I think, redundancies as a result of LGR. And I would expect people of a certain age to be considering whether they wish, to take their pension. I think it's very hard to predict. I don't know. I'm looking at Nigel to see if he can add anything.
If I may, Chair, and it's a really good question, Councillor Bingham. I'd like to see that it's a healthy fund because the number of active employees is increasing, and some of that has been over the years in terms of the introduction of the 50/50 scheme for those with low pay. So hopefully that continues to be the trend for that healthy input. The worry, of course, is this is starting to become a mature fund as we see more pensioners. So we will see more of our workforce getting to that retirement, and therefore it's important when it comes to the valuation and the health of the fund that we continue to grow into those assets to cover the liabilities of those that become pensioners.
Thank you.
Any other members wish to make comments? Oh, yes, Councillor Darrell Hook, thank you.
Yeah, just something left field, page 17. And actually you've got 3 parish councils, which probably only employ 1 person, I would suspect, which have joined the scheme, and they're all from the same district, that would be from Bassetlaw district. Do we advertise to parish councils and others that they're able to do this? I'm just curious to know why it's just Bassetlaw that seems to be on that list.
Thank you, Sarah.
I'm sorry, Councillor Paul, I'm not able to answer that question this morning. I will take that away and come back to you.
Okay, thank you. Any other members wish to make comments on this agenda item? No? Okay, thank you. Right, so to sum up, that the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee notes the performance of the administration of the pension fund and the continued development of systems and processes that improve service to members of the fund. The recommendation in this report is for noting only, so we'll move to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 5. Draft funding strategy, statement and engagement plan. And before I hand over to Joe Tooley to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 28 of the agenda pack. And just a reminder of that recommendation that the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee approves the funding strategy statement, engagement plan, appendix A. I'm going to now ask for a seconder.
Second, the chairman, to see if it's.
Thank you, Councillor Vice Chowdhury. And now I'm going to kindly hand over to Joe Tooley, our Governance Officer here at Nottinghamshire County Council. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Good morning. As part of the triennial evaluation process, the fund's reviewing its funding strategy statement. To do this, we've worked with the actuary to go through the guidance that was issued in January this year. This is new guidance that's changed the look and feel of the document a little bit. We've worked with Barnett Waddingham to produce the draft. And an employer note, which will help explain the changes that have come about from the new guidance. Our discussions with them have indicated that actually in terms of material changes to the funding strategy, there are very few. A majority of the changes have arisen because of what we're now required to do. As part of the process of adopting the funding strategy statement, we're also required to consult. That's why the report's here today. We're asking the members of the committee to approve a consultation arrangement. We've based the engagement plan that's attached as an appendix to the report on the experience we've had previously from consultations we conducted on the draft FSS. That was also shared with members of the local pensions board, and they indicated their support for that at their meeting in October. We will send out tomorrow to all scheme employers a copy of the draft statement together with the employer note, and we'll also publish something on the website. As we weren't able to share the draft with you today, we'll also make sure that you're all included in that together with board members. The consultation will run until 5 p.m. on Friday, the 2nd of January 2026. At that point, we'll revise the FSS taking account of those comments, and we'll be bringing it back to committee on the 12th of February to ask you to approve the new FSS. At that point, we'll be sharing the feedback that we received during the consultation period and how that's affected the final document. So this is at the starting point of the process, then we'll be doing that back in February, and that will lead into the evaluation results that you're due to receive in March.
Thank you very much, Joe Tooley. Right, over to elected members. Does anybody have any comments on this agenda item? That's a no. So, right, to sum up, the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee approves the funding strategy statement, engagement plan, appendix A. We will now move to a vote on the recommendation as set out in the report. Can members raise their hands for? Okay. Okay, lovely, that's been approved. Thank you. Now, agenda item 6, the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund annual report and accounts for 2024 and 2025. Again, before I hand over to Joe to introduce the report, I'd like to move to recommendation on page 34 of the agenda pack. And just a reminder of that recommendation, that authority be delegated to the chair of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee to approve the final annual report and accounts for 2024-2025, thereby enabling publication of the annual report in accordance with the regulatory requirements. I'm going to ask for a seconder.
Secondly, Chairman. Proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vice Chowdhury. Now I'm going to hand over to Joe Tooley. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A Attached to the Appendix A to the report that you have in front of you, is the draft fund annual report and accounts for the 24-25 scheme year. This report was prepared in line with guidance that was issued in 2024, but it will look slightly different this time because it's the first time where we've had to comply with the guidance in the full. Last time, because at the time at which it was issued, we had to comply on a best endeavours basis. As well as the annual accounts and financial management of the fund, the annual report covers investments, pensions administration and governance. We've had an indication that the audit work is now complete on the accounts and we're awaiting for the audit opinion so that we can include that within the report. As we've not received this yet, that's the reason we're asking today for the delegation to the chair so that they can sign off the annual report for publication once that audit opinion is available. You'll see from the report that the fund's required to publish a version of the annual report and accounts by the 1st of December. If we've received the audit opinion in advance of that date, we'll be asking the chair to approve the final version for publication by the 1st of December. If we don't receive it in time for that deadline or in time to get that approval, we'll publish the annual report in draft by the 1st of December and seek agreement to publish the final version as soon as we practically can afterwards. While we're waiting for that, we'll continue to take advantage of that time just to make sure that everything in the report is looking as it should, tidy up any typographical errors we might spot on the way, and just make sure all the formatting and links are working as we would expect them to be.
Thank you very much, Joe. Now I'm going to ask, is any committee members who would like to make comments on this agenda item? And Councillor Stephen Pearson, you go to you first.
Thank you very much. I've got two questions. The first one on page 78. Clearly, the reduction in direct fees by 651,000 is quite an achievement. I'd just like to understand really how that happened. Was that an initiative from members or was that from officers? And when was that reduction agreed? And the second one was a slightly more arcane question. On page 92, you refer to the Virgin Media court case. I just wondered if you could explain the potential impact of that case.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I'm going to pass it over to Tamsin Roberts, our investments manager. Thank you.
Okay, I can answer the question on the oh, sorry. I can answer the question on the investment fees. So we had quite a good reduction last year compared to the year before, and that was due to negotiations that we went through with specifically one of our investment managers, who offered us a discount following concerns, conversations we were having about their performance. So that was the first year. That was just part of a normal conversation between officers and the investment manager. The Virgin Media case is it's not something I've not been hugely involved in this, but there was a case on, it's more of an admin question really, but I don't know if you've been involved in the detail.
No.
Right, so there was a case with Virgin Media to do with whether some of the legal contractual issues around the change in the pension scheme had been properly recognised, which could potentially have caused issues for many other pension funds. I'm not sure we're even clear whether or not we might be included in that. However, the government has since said that we can retrospectively put in place any of that paperwork that was not there. So we're not anticipating it to cause any issues.
Thank you, Tamsin, and Councillor Stephen Pearson, over to you again. Do you want to, did you? No, no, fine, okay. So now over to Councillor Graham Chapman.
Yeah, a few takeaways from this. First of all, performance. Sorry, again. A few takeaways. First of all, we didn't quite reach our expected performance. And I'm just wondering whether it's us or it's an industry-wide issue. So that's the first one. And it'd be interesting to have some comparators. The second is good news. There's sort of surplus cover of about £1 billion. rounded up. That is extremely good news. But my first reaction there is, what is the implication for employer contributions? I knew you'd smile at that point. But terribly interested in what the implications are. Finally, guilt. I've just noticed the actuarial assumption about guilt, and it's just a genuine question. It's got 2%. Now, I know actuaries are probably the most miserable people on the planet, but more so than accountants. Right? But I'm just wondering whether it's a bit miserable, given where guilts are at the moment, or is it historic? My 3 questions.
Thank you, Graham. Okay. I'm going to go over to William Bourne now.
Yeah, I can give some context for how this fund is done relative to other funds last year. I will, before I say anything, I'll give you a big caveat that this is fairly crude data, which I picked up from the data download dump, which the MHCLG publishes in October, which gives data for all funds over 12 months. And so for all funds as at March 25, and I've kind of gone back into that and calculated some fairly crude performance data. And the average, the LGBS scheme level performance was 4.1% over the last 12 months on my data that I'm using. Over 3 years, it was about 4.4%. So over 1 year, this fund is very roughly in line, it's slightly lower than the kind of scheme average. The actual range over 12 months was from minus 0.6 to plus 9.8. So just give you a sense of where funds have been generally.
Thank you, William. And Graham, do you want to add any more?
Well, I've still got other questions. To be honest, and two others.
Yeah.
Okay, Tamsin, over to you.
Thank you. I'll just add to William's comments in that same question from another employer yesterday at a meeting that Barry was at, Barry McCarthy, actuary, and he said actually Nottinghamshire was pretty much smack bang in the middle of performance compared to the other GPS funds that he is involved with. The question around triennial valuation and contribution rates is all tied up with the triennial valuation that we are undergoing at the moment. Initial draft subject to checking results are out for the major employers. So I think if you talk to people at the city, they'll know what the city numbers are looking like. We'll continue to get the results through from the actuary, and we're hoping to circulate those to employers in early December.
Okay. Can you just come back on that? We think that the recharges, right, are absolutely scientific. The more I come across it, the more it's to do with the negotiation at the end. There's a baseline, because I know you go in and negotiate the amounts. So I know there's some margins, right? I'm just interested where we're going with them and what can we, apart from the hard so-called scientific numbers, which are actually not that scientific. Right, where are we going? Does there look to be a reduction in employer contributions this year?
I'm trying not to preempt what the results are that's going to come to the committee in March in terms of validation. There is an exercise of validation that's still going through, but you're right in terms of there is discussions that take place between the fund and the fund representatives with the actuary in terms of their assumptions, in terms of trying to cheer them up, if you say that's correct, in terms of accountants being at a higher tier level than actuaries. To use your language, Graham, but the City Council, so overall, it looks like our performance is hovering around what it has been in the previous one, just slightly under. So we're not going to be 100% at the fund level. That, though, is different for different employers within the fund because it depends on the makeup of their employment. What you will know for instance, is the higher number of pensioners, and therefore you would expect the liability to be higher because we're getting more pensioners as a consequence. Because, as I said, we're getting more to a mature fund now. City council results, city council, it would be wrong for me to announce what it is for each employer, but that has been posted with your 151 officer, and I'm sure he will give you the good news in terms of the primary rate coming down.
Good news. Thank you. That is very helpful. I only saw him during the week and I mentioned it and he didn't say anything about it. There you go. He's like an accountant, he's holding it close to his chest.
Yeah, well, he was invited to a meeting on Friday when we went through that today.
Well, thanks for your indulgence. And I've got that final question is about, well, it's about guilt. And assumptions about guilt.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if colleagues are able to answer the specific question on guilt, so we might have to come back to you on that.
Only to make the observation, sorry, only to make the observation that the forecasts are not based on what they are now, but where they think they're going to be over about the next 20 years.
Right.
So that we had the same thing with inflation at the last valuation, where we were expecting 10% pension increases, and the actuarial assumption was like about 2.7%. So 2.8% or something, and the discrepancy looks really odd, but it's because of that very long time horizon on the assumed performance.
So could I see that? 20-year gilts are about 2% now. There are 4 or 5, between 4 and 5. He's got 2%. It does sound really miserable.
If I may, I can promise you I find very hard with you actually on these questions, not just gilts, but also equities, where I think their returns are too optimistic.
Thank you. I've got a point. Right. There's a load of money behind this and a load of assumptions. So can we pursue, please, and make our factor a bit less miserable?
Just one thing that we have invited Barnet Ordinary to attend our AGM in January, and they will be coming with the. Well, yes, just so that people know that it's, although the results don't become final until the end of March, we'll be getting
came at Halloween
in January.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you very much for your questions and officers answering those. We've got a question from Councillor Bingham.
It's just a quick point of clarification to William about your experience and the rest. You said the fund growth was about 4.2%, I think, but on page 85 said net asset growth, if my sums are correct, which are not always, it's looking like 3.3%. That's net assets. I wonder if you could just clarify that, please.
Yeah, what I said was that the LGPS scheme return was 4.1%. Again, huge caveat, my data is crude. The data is, I say, accurate, but it's crude. The difference between the NAV growth and performance is because of contributions and outpayments. The LTPS generally has had more outpayments than contributions, so NAV will have grown by less than performance.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other members with any questions on this agenda item? No. Okay, right then. To sum up, the authority be delegated to the chair of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee to approve the final annual report and the council 2024 and 25, thereby enabling publication of the annual report in accordance with the regulatory requirements. We're now going to go to a vote on this with members. Those for that, can you please raise your hands? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. That's agreed. So we now move to agenda item number 7, that being the Local Authority Pension Fund, that Strategic Investment Forum Conference of July 2025. And before I hand over to Kieran Guilfoyle to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendations on page 192 of the agenda pack. And a kindly reminder of that recommendation. Number 1, that the Pension Fund Committee members and or its officers, representatives continue to attend the appropriate conferences to enable the committee to be kept up to date with the main national topics relating to investments. And number 2, that members consider if there are any actions they require in relation to the issues contained within the report. And now I'm going to kind of ask for a seconder.
Seconded, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vice Chowdhury. So now I'm going to hand over to our to Kieran Guilfoyle, our investments officer. Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you, Chair. The 2025 LAP Strategic Investment Forum Conference was held on the 30th of June, 1st of July, and I attended as an officer delegate. Many different investment and pooling related issues were covered during the conference, and details of all the sessions are set out in the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. So do we have any members with any questions on this agenda item? Please let me know. Okay, so right, to sum up, we will now move the recommendation set out in the report. We'll take a vote by show of hands. Those for? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move to agenda item number 8, that being the local authority pension fund forum business meetings. Again, before I hand over to Kieran Guilfoyle to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 194 of the agenda pack. And that recommendation being that the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee notes the contents of the report. I'm going to ask for a seconder.
Seconded, Chairman. Just see, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vice Chowdhury. And now kindly hand over to Kieran Guilfoyle. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify before I report on this, this is a different LAF. This has an extra F in a different organisation entirely. The Local Authority Pension Fund Forum was formed in 1990 to provide an opportunity for UK's local authority pension funds to discuss investment and shareholder engagement issues. It exists to assist administering authorities discharge their statutory responsibilities and promote the long-term investment interests of UK local authority pension funds. LAP business meetings are held quarterly, and I attended the July and October meetings as a pension fund officer representative. Business meetings cover various engagement issues. The July meeting covered the electricity costs, noting the confusion between the cost of generating renewable electricity and its price determined by the pricing mechanism. And the October meeting covered the policy issue of climate adaptation, which is about companies anticipating and preparing for climate-related changes. At both meetings, we're also presented updates on LAP's quarterly company engagement work, and links to these updates can be found on the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund's website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kieran. Have I got any questions that members would like to raise on this agenda item? That's a none. Right, so to sum up, the recommendation in the report is for noting. So we'll now move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 9, the Nottinghamshire Local Pensions Board Annual Review for 2024 and 2025. Now, before I hand over to both Joe and Tulani to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 198 of the agenda pack. And that recommendation, that contents of the Nottinghamshire Local Pension Board Annual Review 2024-25, Appendix A, to be noted. And I'm now going to ask for a seconder.
Seconded, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vice Chowdhury. And now I'm going to kindly hand over to Joe Toomey and Tulani Relief. Thank you.
Thank you. Every year, the Local Pensions Board produces a review of the work that it's completed in the previous scheme year. So the report is going to be for us 24-25. We share this with the committee as a mechanism for the board to update the committee on what it's been doing, but also to give it an opportunity to raise any recommendations it would like to make. From the report in front of you for this year, there aren't any recommendations the board wishes to flag. And with that, I shall hand over to Talani, who will be able to give you his edited highlights of anything he'd like to draw your attention to.
Right, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for inviting us to do our annual review. Firstly, just to give you a little bit of background about what the board does, which is that it was established in March 2015 and is responsible for assisting the fund secure compliance with pensions legislations, regulations and guidance to ensure the effective governance and administration of the local government pension scheme in Nottinghamshire. So we are charged to make sure that we fulfill the board annual review, that we fulfill our board annual review, and that any of the review updates, committee members and board activities were appropriate. I can be very quickly, if you're anything like our board, you've read your papers, so I'll just go through just a few highlighted items. First and foremost, it's just to give you the recommendation, which is that the annual review has been complied through consultation with the chair of the local pension board and the advisor to the local pension board, and its preparation and referral to the committee fulfills the requirement of the board to report to the committee on its activities. The main bits of it are just a few thank yous, which I'll start off with. Firstly, just want to thank you to my fellow board members, new and old. Thank you very much to a few of the retiring members, which unfortunately we'll never have a chance to say officially thank you. We do so in our committee meetings, but I think this is the appropriate platform to also say our thank yous for them. Also the support that I've had from John Raisin, who is our advisor, unfortunately stepped down, but actually my biggest thanks go to Sarah, Joe, the team, and again, as I said, my fellow board members. If you've read through a lot of the information, I think there's certain things that are coming up in the agenda anyway. So we've had a look at risk, cyber, pooling, which obviously is going to be a great thing that we're going to be looking forward to have to do. And yeah, so in conclusion, and I'll be very quick with this, the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund operates within the overall regulatory framework as defined by the LGPS regulation, associate statutory guidance and other overriding legislation, and other recommended principles of best practice. The report provides to the board during the 2025 gave it assurance that the fund was complying with the requirements. So I think that's well done to you. However, there's a few things to look forward to which are going to be really interesting. Things to look for the future, which is firstly the Fit for the Future program that's going to be coming up, and that the government will be indicating consultation on work streams that will affect pensions administration, the new fair deal on improving data, opt-outs and survivor benefits and reforms, and the gender pension gap. So really without any further to do, just to simply conclude that 24-25 has been a busy but positive year for Local Pensions Board, and we hope to build on this position throughout the 25-26 as the LGPS begins a significant period of transformation and change.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Tilani. It's great to have Tilani on the pension board with all his experience and knowledge. Does any committee members have any questions on this item? No, thank you. So then to sum up, the recommendation in the report is for noting. So we'll now kindly move to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 10. Which is proxy voting. And before I hand over to Kieran Guilford to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 211 of the agenda pack. that being the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee notes the contents of the report. I'm going to now kindly ask for a seconder.
Seconded, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chowdhury, and hand over to Kieran Gilmore. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The pension fund has responsibility for voting any directly held shares. Voting is undertaken on the fund's behalf by Hermes EOS in line with voting principles of LGPS Central. LGPS Central also engages with the companies it has voted in. This is reported in its quarterly stewardship update, and the most recent update highlights, among other things, the drop in the number of shareholder proposals filed at US company AGMs, as it's now easier for companies to exclude some proposals. An overview of the Hermes EOS voting activity and Central's engagement work is shown in the report and is also published on the fund's website every quarter. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieran. Do we have any comments from committee members on this agenda item? Okay, thank you. Councillor Stephen Pearson, over to you.
Sorry, it's me again. An issue I've raised before in these meetings is that I find it quite interesting that in a majority of the board meetings where we're represented, actually we vote against one or more resolutions, which seems quite interesting and potentially quite disturbing. I think from previous feedback that I've had, this tends to be about things like board remuneration, where we think they're proposing to perhaps pay too much, and perhaps sometimes ethical issues. I just wondered how successful we tend to be in terms of these oppositions, or do we just find that we're voting symbolically and not really getting anywhere? And if we're not getting anywhere, is there anything we can do to try and get our way perhaps a bit more often?
Thank you, Stephen. It's Kieran, if you will respond. Thank you.
I'm not sure how I can rate how successful we are. I mean, at the very least, we are, well, through our Hermes EOS, we are registering our responsible investment interests at these AGMs. Whether we end up winning the vote or not is an entirely different matter. I don't know if anyone from the responsible investment team at LGPS Central might be able to provide some more information on that. Since we do our voting in partnership with them and follow their voting guidelines.
Thank you, Kieran. Over to LGPS if you do wish to.
Yeah, I can come in there and just provide a bit of clarity. There will be a session this afternoon where we'll go into this in more detail. But generally, about 20% of dissent, so 20% of investors or share ownership voting against management is generally seen as quite a high level of dissent. Whilst that's not binding on management, it does tend to influence management. So over a period of time, you would expect to see positive change. Disclosure around remuneration, around lobbying activity, and around climate planning and management has generally been as a result of investor engagement and investor voting activity with management. So at each vote, it's very difficult to point to success that immediately brings about a change in policy or approach by management. But over a period of time, the voice of particularly minority shareholders like yourselves, voting is generally an opportunity to show dissent on a number of different levels. There's a number of resolutions. Remuneration is just one of them, but it could be about the board composition and board independence and things like that. So it is generally seen as an important part of shareholder rights.
I just wonder, I'm conscious that you don't have full data, whether at a future meeting we might have an opportunity to have some perhaps more detailed information as to how successful these efforts are in practice. Otherwise, it just seems a little bit symbolic, to be honest.
Yeah, at the end of every voting season, the results are published and are available. So we can certainly bring that back to a pensions committee and share those with you. I would say the amount of dissent varies every year, and this year it's been lower than historically, but we can give you sort of some trend analysis on that.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, I think you have to see this as the overt bit of your engagement with companies. You have to see that alongside all the other forms of engagement that we take part with through LAB or through LGPS Central and other funds. So you might not necessarily be able to pinpoint as this has been the thing that's actually been the success. It's just wrapping up the public debate. But there's a lot more things that take place, which you'll see in another item on the agenda in trading this afternoon, that you'll see in terms of the full engagement that we take place with companies that do make a difference.
Thank you, Nigel. Cassidy, I will walk over to you.
Thank you, Nigel. You sort of said some of the things I was going to say, but you got there first. Prior to having the call, the LAPWF used to engage collectively with all the members of the pension funds, and they put collective resolutions, voting intentions in. As a consequence of that, looking back historically, things like social responsible investment is a fringe item, and only certain companies have policies, less companies adhere to it. As time progressed, all companies have social responsible investment policies and virtually all adhere to it. And it's an incremental stage. By acting as a collective, now we have a pool. Whilst you won't make a step change in company thinking, it is registered in boardrooms if they see that this has been raised. And other investors, including individual investors, take heed when authorities, local authorities, make a stance. And I think it is an extremely important part of ensuring that the companies that we invest in and the returns that we get for our pension funds are properly managed. So I think it's not a clear cut, do this and end up with that. It's a question of changing the agenda, and that's what's been happening. So I fully support this approach. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Daryl. Any other questions from members? Councillor Bingham.
Just a quick observation again, going back to the last comment, is that is it possible, it's got to be very difficult to try and prove what an outcome would have been from a decision point. You have a definitive outcome, but if a different decision had been made, would that have been better or worse? I think if I picked up on what you were saying, so it might be a difficult question to answer that one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else with any questions on this item? No. Okay, thank you. So the recommendation in the report is just denoted. So now we'll move on to the next agenda item. Make a very good time. Agenda item number 11, Climate Action Plan report. And before I hand over to Tamsin to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 222 in the agenda pack. It's two of those. Number one, the members endorse the work that has been undertaken and note the progress made against the Climate Action Plan, which going forward will be part of business as usual. Number two, that members consider whether there are any actions they require in relation to the progress of the Nottinghamshire County Council Pension Fund Climate Action Plan. Before I hand over to Tamsin, again, I kindly ask for a seconder.
Seconder, Chairman, please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. And now kindly hand over to Tamsin Rabbits, our investments manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The first climate risk report was reported to the Nottinghamshire County Council Pension Fund in October 2020, with a number of recommendations which became the fund's climate action plan. Since then, the plan has been reviewed and updated on receipt of the annual climate risk reports, and the committee has received regular progress reports. The actions are now fully incorporated into business as usual, so the recommendation is that the plan is considered complete for reporting purposes, and the fund continues to monitor and manage the financial risks arising from climate change on an ongoing basis. The table in the report shows the progress which has been made against the climate action plan since the last update, and whether that's in accordance. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamsin. It's quite quite comprehensive reports in here. Now I'm going to kindly ask any committee members, do you have any questions on item number 11? Thank you. Okay, that's a no. Right. So to sum up, we're now going to move the vote on the recommendations set out in the report. All members kindly raise their hands for. That's unanimous. Thank you. That's been approved. Number 12, agenda item number 12, that's the pooling update from UPS Central Limited on their presentation. And before I hand over to Melanie and Richard from LGPS Central to introduce the presentation, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 226 of the agenda pack. And that recommendation is the contents of the presentation be noted. I'm now going to ask for a seconder. Thank you.
Sorry, Secretary Chairman. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chowdhury. And now it's over to Melanie and Richard from LGPS to do the presentation. And of course, thank you again, the LGPS group for coming today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As I said when I introduced myself, my name is Richard Ordeeks. I'm the CEO of LGPS Central. I've been in role now for a year and 5 months, although it feels like a lot longer. The slide deck is in the pack. I believe it starts at page 227, but I will speak generally, if I may, and refer to specific slides if I need to. If we skip forward the slide, I think it's power. There we go. So there's 4 areas I will cover. So I'll try and introduce LGPS Central to you. I appreciate many members of the committee of you. This is the first time you've met us, but we do have a training session this afternoon and we can go into more detail there. I'll talk about people and culture. I'll also talk about delivering for partner funds, and this is the strategy I put in place shortly after joining. And then finally, I'll talk about Fit for the Future. And this is the government reform programme that has really superseded that strategy, and you'll hear us talk about it a lot today because it's what's dominating all business at the moment. So I'm happy to take questions as we go along. I'll pause at the end of each section to take questions, and we also, as mentioned, have the training session. So if I start by introducing LGPS Central, LGPS Central is your pooling company. We're an investment management company authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority. Nottinghamshire Pension Fund is one of 8 LGPS funds that created us and also own us to the shareholders. So we were formed in 2018, and this was part of the pooling journey started by the previous government. Back then, the ambition was to create sovereign wealth funds, but this has been continued by the current government, who are now talking about mega funds. And shortly after coming to power, they launched a pension investment review, and Fit for the Future was the LGPS part of that review. So we were one of 8 pools. There's now 6, but we'll come on to that. If we jump forward a slide, another one. Assets under stewardship are currently 50 billion, so that's hot off the press. That's as at the end of October. We've generated £115 million in savings so far, and we're forecasting to generate 372 million by the date that's up there, which I believe is 2030, 2034. This has been validated recently by benchmarking we've done with an external company called CEM, and this has put us in the low-cost, high-value add quadrant. So far, we've created 30 investment vehicles, and we also provide services like support on responsible investment and bespoke mandates like the gilt mandate that we run for Nottinghamshire Pension Fund. So if we jump back a slide, sorry about this, whoever's controlling the slides. This is a slide really that highlights what I think is a little bit different about LGPS Central compared to the other 7 pools. So we are future-proof. We've got a lot of the things that the government was looking for in Fit for the Future. We are an FCA authorised company. We do have some internal management capabilities, and we do have some experience in local investment. Diversity. So this is really about our partner funds, our owners. We've got some of the biggest and some of the smallest funds in the LGPS. We also have a range of different governance models. So some use consultants, some use independent advisors, some use both, some use none. Resilience. So our pooling journey has had ups and downs. We've had challenging times. I'm not the first CEO, but we've come up through the other side of those. Nemini is 2 weeks into the role as new chair, and I think the transition has been seamless. So I think that's a really good sign of how resilient we are. Practical progress. We only build when it's in the interest of our clients. That's the main driver why not all of the AUM of our partner funds is in the pool. We've not created products where clients have needed them. And when we were coming up with our plan for Fit for the Future that the government requested, we worked with clients to deliver that, and we were practical and pushed back on areas that we thought weren't deliverable. And the last point here is that the LGPS is in our DNA. Me and many members of my leadership team have a fund background. We're an employer in the LGPS. We understand how important the scheme is to public servants in delivering a benefit to those workers. That's what I was going to say in section 1. I'll pause there for sections for questions. And if not, I will move on to section 2 and talk a little bit about our people and culture.
Can I mention one?
Yeah, absolutely.
You skipped over diversity there by referring to partnerships, but when you made I'll just double check. Yeah, the presentation in July, diversity was presented as being 43% non-white ethnic background, and I wondered what that had anything to do with investment and returns.
It's something that we're proud of. I think it reflects where we're based, and I'll come on to it in people and culture, where we're based in Wolverhampton. So the Midlands is a very diverse area, and I think it's reflective of the region we're based in. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
There's another question over there.
Yeah, William, please.
Richard, you used the figure about the cost saving, gross cost savings, which came from CEM benchmarking, and I've got great respect for CEM benchmarking, but can you give a bit more detail? Was that purely the investment costs? And did you include, for example, the direct costs of running, setting up, hiring people at LGPS Central? Because I think net savings might be a very different figure from gross savings.
Absolutely. So the numbers I quoted were based on the MHCLG methodology. So those are figures that are collected by MHCLG every year. The CM benchmarking is something that is, again, hot off the press. We can come back with a bit more detail on that, but that looks at actual numbers and based on a more realistic, practical methodology. The net figure is different. I don't know what off the top of my head what it is, but we can pick it up in the training this afternoon if that's okay.
Thank you. Got any more, please?
Yeah, so if I talk about people and culture. So as I've mentioned, we're based in Wolverhampton. We did have an office in the East Midlands in Matlock. Did not survive COVID, unfortunately. We're currently around 110 people. If we go to slide 9, you can see this is my leadership team. This is a almost completely new team that's been built over the last 18 months. And we have a new member, a Chief Operating and Technology Officer, joining shortly in the new year. You can see the structure of the team on this slide. I won't go over it in detail. I will just jump back to the next slide, if I may, and talk a little bit about our values. So you can see these on this slide. Our values are: be curious enough to challenge and strong enough to change, own outcomes with ambition and pride, strive to shape a better future for everyone, and build trust and transparency. And build trust through transparency and teamwork. And quite intentionally, in the middle of those values, you will see all of our partner funds. And that is because one of the things we're all about is client centricity. So that's what I was going to say on people and culture, Chair. Again, I'll pause for questions. And if there are none, I will hand over to our new chair just to say a few words.
Richard, thank you. As Richard shared with you, I am a new appointment to the board of LGPS Central, and this is my second week in the job. So I would ask that you are gentle with me, please. You are also my first pensions committee, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here and to bring sunshine with us from Wolverhampton. So as the independent non-executive chair of the board, I head up a professional board, as you would expect, as a regulated asset manager. The board comprises myself and 4 other non-executives, all of whom have relevant professional experience to contribute to the board. And we work closely alongside Richard and another executive director, providing strategic leadership for the pool company, providing oversight and also seeking assurance that the company is being run in the interests of all of our stakeholders. And of course, that includes the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund as one of our valued partner funds. So as I said, I'm delighted to be here with the team today, and I very much look forward to meeting a few more of you during the course of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. So if we move to the next section, which is called Delivering for Partner Funds. So this is a representation of those 30 funds that I mentioned. If we move to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the strategy that I put in place shortly after joining. So the strategy was built around 4 strategic outcomes, and those were strengthening stakeholder relationships, demonstrating value for money, and enhancing investment performance. And if we got all of those things right, the asset under stewardship of the pool would go up. So, I'm really pleased to report progress against this since the last time we were here. Trust is something that we are building with our partner funds. It's something that officers are starting to use specifically as a word, and that fills me with joy. Credibility is another thing that we're building with our stakeholders. So we went from not being invited to the launch party of the pension investment review to being cited in the consultation as an example of best practice. And I think that's really important that we've been able to put ourselves on the map for those stakeholders. I've already talked about the gross savings, and really pleased to say those have increased since last year. I'm also really pleased to say that 77% of our assets under stewardship are equal ahead of the benchmark since inception. And I think that's quite important, and it's a metric that other commercial asset managers measure themselves on. I think because we've got all of these things, or improving all of these things, the AUM has gone up. When I arrived, we were at just over 30 billion, and today, as I mentioned, we're at 50. So I think that's real progress. If we move on to the next slide, underpinning these strategic outcomes have been 3 things. People, we've got lots of new people. Again, when I arrived, there were around just under 90 people, and as I mentioned, we're at 110. You've met Emily today, but we've had a new CIO come in and a new director of policy. We're both pictured there. Technology is something we need to focus on. We want to become a technology-enabled asset manager, and strategic partnerships. And this goes back to the point I made around practical progress and not building for the sake of building, and working with third-party providers where it's the right thing to do. So that's what I was going to say on the strategy and where we are with it. Obviously, Fit for the Future has overtaken that and has been in the focus. So if we skip a couple of slides, I'll talk briefly about Fit for the Future. So these are the 5 key things that Fit for the Future has changed about pooling. Again, we can talk about these in detail this afternoon, but what they essentially mean is it's a change in what the pool does and what the partner fund does. It's a lot more implementation for the pool rather than just providing products for funds to invest in. All pools must be FCA authorised companies. As I mentioned, we're already an FCA authorised company with a full set of permissions. Administering authorities will be required to transfer all assets over to the pool, including legacy assets. And pools will be required to develop the capability of doing due diligence on open investments. So if we go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit now about what that's meant. So as I alluded to, the government has asked all pools to produce a transition plan. This is something we work closely with officers at our partner funds on. And the government made a decision that 2 pools wouldn't continue. So we now have 6. The 2 pools that haven't continued were Access and Brunel. And the 21 partner funds of those 2 pools were asked to find a new home. And I'm really pleased to say that 7 of those funds have chosen LGPS Central, 4 from Access and 3 from Brunel. And this map shows what the new region will look like. We'll be obviously not just in the Midlands anymore. We will spread down to the south coast and also include East Anglia. The AUM will be around 100 billion, depending on what markets are doing that day. and we will cover 5,000 employees and 1.6 million scheme members. So I think that's a real testament to the hard work that our partner funds and the company has done to go out and demonstrate our capabilities to those partner funds. And I think it sets us up for the future. But going forwards, we're now looking internally. There's a lot we've got to do in the next 6 months to deliver those 6 things I've talked about, and that is very much the focus. Again, I've covered that briefly. We've got more time this afternoon to go into detail. I'm happy to take questions now or go into more detail this afternoon.
Thank you, Richard. Do you have any questions on this? As Richard said, we're not going into more detail later on. Any more questions? Oh, yes, Councillor Graham Chapman.
The idea of creating these large funds, again, is partly economy of scale, but in both governments, I've been supporting both governments in what we're intending to do, is try and get more investment in the UK. You then bring it down to locality. I mean, I've always been very keen to get more investment locally in Nottinghamshire, Nottingham, probably now wider. Now, there's always been a tension between rates of return and investment. Just interested in your response on that.
I think they're very good points. I think it goes back to our point around the diversity of our partner funds. I think the government or NHCLG and that, the minister of that department specifically, at the same time as they've been running Fit for the Future, they were running local government reorganisation as well as English devolution. And I think those two things have been connected, and probably the most successful examples of local investment have come from areas where there have been strong combined authorities and they've been able to work with the pension fund, the local pension fund. In LGPS Central, we have a real range in that respect. We have some pension funds in our regions where we have mayors and combined authorities already in place. Been there for many years. We have other regions like East Midlands where that's more, the forming of those is still happening. Like we have a East Midlands combined authority, but it's still working on a strategy, still building out. And we have other areas which are in the priority programme, like Cheshire and Warrington, which are, behind East Midlands, haven't set up a combined authority yet, but they're on that fast track programme. We've got other funds where it's, they're just dealing with LGR at the moment, and that's their focus. So I think there's a real mix in terms of appetites for local investment. I think as a call and the plan we put together for the future, it was about respecting those different attitudes or approaches to local investment. Attitude's probably not the right word. I was looking for the word appetites. Your point on fiduciary duty is really important. We are here to generate returns so that you can pay your members' pensions, and that is the most important thing. But where it is possible to invest and generate those returns, it's a double dividend. It's, everyone can win. And I think those are the real opportunities. There's not that many of them, but where there are, those are the ones that LGPS Central wants to invest.
Okay, thank you, Richard. I've got a question from Tilani. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for your presentation. Just a question, on the new AUM. Obviously, we've got other funds that are joining us. How many of them are fully funded? And if there's liabilities, what are the plans for those liabilities? If they're not fully funded, will they join the pool?
So the pool is only responsible for the assets. The liabilities are the fund's problem. Sorry to say that. It's something that we've considered as part of the due diligence process. We have looked at the funding levels. I think generally, I'd say the LGPS is in a really good place, and William's nodding, so I'm glad he is. I don't think we've got any funds who are joining who aren't broadly in line with the rest of the LGPS. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, but I think it would be something that I'll deep delve into in session.
Yeah, I think I think what's interesting is in the pensions bill, the government's given itself powers not only to compel funds to certain tools, but to push the fund merger agenda. And I think that's something that's worth watching, and probably where the liability question comes in a bit more. I think it's also going to be quite interesting in terms of local government reorganisation. If new authorities are being set up and all authorities are being disbanded, where do those liabilities go? Again, it's interesting from a board perspective, but not so much our problem.
Okay, thank you, Tilani. Thank you, Richard. Question from Councillor Bingham.
It's just a point on what, I'm sorry, because you mentioned Emca just now, there are going to be, or should be, exciting investment opportunities within the region. So it's the globalism, localism, investment return equation, which we understand. But I think there will be, or should be, some exciting investment opportunities coming up in the region over the next 10 to 15 years, not tomorrow.
Absolutely, and we're starting that conversation around Emca, but we do appreciate it's a journey. It's going to take a bit of time. I think my slight nervousness is it's not going to drive short-term growth in the UK. It's going to be a slow burn. But I think back to that double dividend. If it does help the UK, then I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. A question from Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you very much, LPGS, for attending today. Just a quick brief. Can you able to highlight us what is the benefit for pulling to Nottinghamshire Fund? Can you just highlight a little bit just what benefit and what fees will increase or decrease? Can you just please explain to us?
It's a quite wide-ranging question. I think there's definitely benefits around scale. I think over the medium to longer term, once the costs of setting up the core are kind of amortised over that period, I think the savings will be demonstrated. We're still relatively young in pension terms. I don't know how long Nottinghamshire pension funds are around, but compared to the fund, we are a baby or even a toddler. So I think those cost savings are going to take a bit of time to be demonstrated, and I think I'm not convinced that the MHCLG methodology is the right way to look at it. And again, William's shaking his head, so that's good. But I think the real value add at the moment for Nottinghamshire is us being able to act as an extension of your officers. I think we're able to offer you bespoke strategies like a guilt mandate that would probably not cost effective to do with an advisor or another manager. And I think they're quite innovative, and they've allowed us to move. We're not about timing the market, we're a long-term investor, but they've allowed us to take advantage of opportunities in terms of pricing that have allowed the fund to improve its risk-adjusted returns. So I think that's a real positive. I think the burden put on funds in terms of climate reporting has been quite a big ask, and I think we've been able to help with that. We've been able to provide a team that supported all of our partner funds in terms of climate reporting that I think has been very well received by the funds. So I think that's a value out of coming together and working as a core. And I think, and this is a question probably for Tamsin, but I think the officers coming together and being able to be close and talk about things that are going on in the LGPS is a real value add. I think it's probably a little bit therapeutic, but it also there's a lot of sharing of best practice around things that aren't anything to do with bullying. So I think it's good from a cultural point of view as well. Is that helpful, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you very much for highlighting this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions from members? No? Okay, right. So to sum up the recommendation of the report, it's just the noting. So now we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 13. It's the work programme as set out in page 248 of the agenda pack. And the recommendation is that the committee considers whether any amendments are required to the work programme. I formally move the recommendation. I ask for a seconder.
I second the Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury, and finally hand over to Tamsin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In the appendix, you can see the work programme for the rest of the committee meeting for the current cycle. The committee is asked to identify any additional reports required. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tamsin. Do any committee members have any additional questions and James 13 work programme. That's a note. Okay, so to sum up, we'll now move to vote on recommendation as set out in the report. Those in favour, please raise your hands. That's unanimous. Carried, thank you. We now move to agenda item 14. We're about 1.5 hours into the committee. That's the climate risk management report, the climate related financial disclosures, TCFD report. Before I hand over to Tamsin to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation as set out on page 255 of the agenda pack. And the recommendation is, it's that members continue monitoring the fund's exposure to financially material climate-related risks, taking appropriate action to mitigate against these risks if required. And number 2, recommendations that members consider whether there are any actions they require in relation to the issues contained within the report. And I'm just going to ask for a seconder.
A seconder, please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. And again, over to Tamsin Rabbits. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Pension Fund receives climate risk management reports from LGPS Central to enable the fund to understand financial risks arising from climate-related risks and to report on this in accordance with best practice. We're pleased to welcome Josh Simpson from LGPS Central to present the report and explain its findings, and also to enable members to appreciate the challenge in obtaining reliable data for these calculations. Before you start, can I just draw members' attention to the fact that this report has an exempt section as well as the TCFD report. So if anybody has any questions on the exempt section, please would you hold those until the exempt part of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tamsin, and thanks for the reminder about the exclusion area. Over to you, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you for that introduction. So the slides are there, brilliant. So I'm Josh Simpson, as Tamsin said. I've been with LGPS for almost a year now. And before this, I worked in business intelligence. So I'm here to present the climate risk monitoring report for 2025. It's going to take the form of 3 sections. There'll be an initial introduction to the report. Then I'm going to go through some terms and some metrics that you can find within the report. And then finally, we will look at some of the metrics for Nottinghamshire Pension Fund. Thank you. So to begin then, the function of the report is twofold. So primarily, not primarily, firstly, this is a TCFD compliant report. So that is the task force for climate-related financial disclosure. And whilst this is not yet mandatory reporting, we're expecting it to be the case shortly. So it's good that Nottinghamshire are ahead of the curve on this. Secondly, this is primarily, we are here to track the climate-related risk. So that is transition risk, as well as physical risk. So transition risk being regulatory risk or change in demand related to climate, and physical risk being the increased physical risk that assets might see, such as natural disasters. The third use of the report is for communication to stakeholders and shareholders, and again to make decision useful, for decision useful data, and that's what the aim of the report is. Can the next slide, please? So I will skip over the slide very quickly. This is quite self-explanatory. So the idea of double materiality is throughout the report. This is that the impact that our investments have an impact on the environment or the society in which they're situated, and also that the environment or society has an effect on the investments, including the returns. So we move on, please. So that's the report. We're now going to move on to some of the terms that you will find throughout the report, as well as some of the headline metrics. To start with, we will look at how we report on emissions. So these are in scope 1 through 3. In order to bring this to life, it's worth coming up with an example. So if you were to imagine a retailer that we were invested in, so one emissions of that retailer would be anything that is directly combusted on site. So if you have a gas boiler or if you have a combustion engine working on site, those count as your scope 1. Scope 2 is any energy that's purchased and the emissions associated with how that energy is generated. And scope 3 is much broader and tends to include upstream and downstream. So in our example of a retailer, the upstream would be the manufacture of products that are eventually sold, and the downstream would be the use and disposal of those products. So that's if you see scope 1 through 3, and apologies for people who already knew that. On to the next slide, please. I'll talk you through this because it seems like the slide was being presented has gone a bit skew. We're going to present 3 of the metrics, but before I do, it's just worth explaining that we don't rely on any one or even just these 3 metrics when we're talking. The point of the report is to identify material climate risk and make sure that we're fully aware of the risk that we're taking when we're investing, and therefore we get the right price when we do. But these are 3 of the headline metrics, and so when I get to the final couple of slides, will be in action when doing the evaluation. So to begin, and the one that is legible on that slide is financed emissions. So this is the emissions, as you would expect it, of the investments. So the way to understand this is if you own 1% of a company, you are responsible for 1% of the emissions of that company. And this allows us to track the emissions across a whole portfolio when we are entering and exiting positions from companies. This is useful, as I said, for understanding our progress, but there are some downsides and some gaps to this information. The primary gap is around comparability. So comparing a £5 million fund to a £150 million fund, you'd expect that if you invest in more assets, you're going to have more emissions associated with those assets. And it's worth keeping in mind when we come back to that at the end, because it's an interesting point within Nottinghamshire Pension Fund. Normalised finance emissions is designed to fill the gaps within financed emissions. So this is where we look at emissions per £1 million invested, and the primary function of this is that comparability. So this allows us to compare apples with apples. The final metric which I'm going to mention here is WACI, which is weighted average carbon intensity. And similar to normalised emissions, this is designed for comparability. And the function of this is we look at the emissions per £1 million of revenue of the underlying position. On to the next slide. So one of the downsides of the reported metrics on the previous slide is that they are generally backwards looking. We're looking at measuring ourselves. In answer to that, we have come up with a proprietary measure, which is about alignment with net zero. So this is made up of the 3 things that you can see on slide at the moment. The low carbon transition score, the LCT score, that is an idea of the current position of a holding. So scoring from 0 to 10. And then the 2 forward-looking metrics are the 2 that you can see below, which is science-based targets, i.e. the commitments of the issuers, and implied temperature rise, which is the trajectory of the issues. And when we combine these together, this gives us another metric that we can look at to better identify the risk associated with holdings. And the benefit of this is that we can see things coming down the tracks, which not only lets us avoid risk, it lets us capture the opportunities that come with it. On to the next slide, please. Another thing that you will find within the report is our reporting on data quality and availability. So this is in line with DL-UHC recommendations, specifically the TCFD reporting. This is generally quite self-explanatory, but nonetheless particularly interesting. So we have you can see in the, on the left-hand side our listed equities, and on the right-hand side our corporate fixed income. The green is reported data, the amber or yellow is the estimated data, and the red is missing data. So generally over time listed equities has been reliant on more reported data, whereas you can see from the visual on the right-hand side, the drastic change within corporate fixed income, which is leading to almost parity between the two. And the key takeaway from this slide is that higher data quality means that our predictions and our understanding of that risk is increasing, which makes for better decision making. And the final point on the metrics that you might see within this report are our exposure metrics. Sorry. Thank you. So our exposure metrics cover 3 areas. We look at exposure to fossil fuels, to thermal coal, and to clean technology. And again, the point of this is to better understand the climate-related risk. We report these in 2 ways, and the tabs that you can see across the bottom are from the report, so that is real data. The first way that we report data, the absolute exposure, is we would account if a company is exposed to 1, 2, or 3 of these sectors, we would account all of their revenue as being exposed. This is useful for some sectoral analysis. It's also useful for quick analysis of if there's a company that you don't have a holding in already, you can see some of its peers. But if we were to look specifically at trying to identify and evaluate risk, we would look at the exposure apportioned by the company revenue. So if there was a global company that had 1% exposure to fossil fuels, we would only put the emissions of 1% of that company. And therefore, when we're looking at exposure across a whole portfolio level, we can be more accurate with what our exposure is to those risks. So those are some of the metrics and terms that you will find in the report. The final 2 slides, which I will move on to now, give us some of the live examples, and then takes data from the report. So the visual you can see on the left-hand side, the columns are the financed emissions, which we talked about earlier being the absolute emissions of our investments. The lines are the normalised financial emissions, which is the emissions per £1 million of investment. And then I'll just walk through some of the findings on the right-hand side. On finance emissions, we see a drop since 2019 of 22.4%. And versus the reference index, which is a blended index based on the asset class, we see a reduction of 24.6%. And you might remember earlier I mentioned that usually one of the downsides of financed emissions is it fluctuates with assets under management. And generally, as you increase the amount of AUM, you also increase the amount of financed emissions. With Nottinghamshire Pension Fund, this isn't the case. So despite an increase of more than 20% of AUM, we've seen a decrease in financed emissions of more than 20%. And if we were to use the normalised figure, you'd see that there's been a decrease of 44.8% since 2019, and a slightly smaller reduction versus the reference index. One more slide on this before some kind of headline takeaways. When we look at our WACC over time, that's our weighted average carbon intensity, we see a similar trend, a reduction of 35.2% since 2019 and 34.4% against the reference index. All this to say, and the highlights of the report, is that the management system put in place to manage the climate risk is working. We're seeing a general decrease, and to also highlight that we are not necessarily having a target of where we want to achieve here, but we are trying to be aware of the risk in order to make better decision making. And that is the report. Thank you very much. If there's any questions on any of the reports or anything I've said, please do fire away.
Thank you, Josh. Comprehensive report there. Any questions on any of our members? Okay, that's a no. Right. So we'll now move the vote on recommendations as set out in the report. I'm going to ask members now to raise your hands for. That is unanimous. Thank you. That's all carried. Agenda item number 15, Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Risk Register, a deep dive. And before I hand over to Sarah Stevenson to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendations that are on page 295 of the agenda pack. Those being, there's 2. Number one, that the committee makes the contents of the fund's risk register, and number two, that the committee confirms the topic for deep dive at its next risk meeting. And I'm now going to kind of ask for a seconder.
I second the chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury, and now hand over to Sarah Stevenson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report presents the updated fund risk register. The intention is to give the committee assurance about the arrangements in place relating to risk, and also provides an opportunity to undertake a deep dive into cyber risk. During 2024, the fund worked with Matt Hardwick from Zurich to review the risk register. The outcome was the development of a new format for our risk register, which was also broken down into the 4 categories of strategic, investment, admin and governance. Risk register is a live document. The report provides a list of updates to the risk register, and the report also details the methods used to identify risks and the risk assessment process. As part of refreshing the risk register, we considered the most effective way for committee to review the risks and to be and to take an active role. The risk register is also reviewed by the Pensions Board. The new approach, following our work with Zurich, is to enable committee and board the opportunity to deep dive into a chosen risk. The approach that we've taken so far is that we have done a deep dive into both cyber and also pension scams. The purpose of the deep dive is to give committee and board the chance to undertake a comprehensive review of a strategic risk, to provide an opportunity for committee and board to challenge and to ensure that risk register is appropriate, and also to assist in identifying further steps. And it also demonstrates that both committee and board take the management of risk seriously. Since the report provides the first opportunity for the new committee to undertake a deep dive, and given increasing reports of incidents in recent months, members are invited to review the fund's approach to cyber risk. Matt is also joining us so that he can provide you with more information and training on how we've gone and we've approached our risk review. There is an exempt part of the meeting as well. So again, as Tamsin said earlier, if we can just be careful about the questions at this point in time. So the recommendations of the report are that the contents of the fund's risk register are noted, and also that the committee confirms the topic for deep dive. Both of these items are in the exempt part of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And now over to Matt Hardwick. Thank you very much for coming. Seeing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Let me, if I may, just set up my machine so that I can share the content with yourselves.
Sorry, Matt. Can I check? Is this presentation during the public part of the meeting, or is that during the confidential section?
In the exempt, sorry. It's in the exempt.
Sorry.
We jumped ahead.
Don't worry. That's all right. Yeah. I'll wait then.
Okay, well, introduce you anyway, Matt. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Right. So it does say on my agenda item that we're now going to take a move, vote on recommendations as set out in the report. Agenda item number 15. Take a vote by show of hands. For. That is unanimous, carried, approved. Okay, we now move to agenda item number 16, exclusion of the public. We now move to the part of the proposals that we meet in closed session to consider the exempt informations in agenda items 17 and 18. I therefore invite the committee to resolve that the public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting of the grounds that the discussions are likely to involve disclosure of the exempt information as described in Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and in the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. I ask for a seconder.
Second, Chairman. Proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. I'm just going to ask members to raise hands for that exclusion. That's approved, unanimous, carried. Thank you. And thank you, members of the general public, for attending, and any online viewers for their interest. Please wait for any members of the public to leave. The chamber and the live stream is due to end shortly. Thank you.